The aid package announced today by the federal government, the financial aid package, amounts to about 3% of Canada's GDP. Of the $82 billion the government is promising, $55 billion will be through tax deferrals and credit supports. $27 billion will be through direct supports such as wage subsidies. Most of the programs announced will require legislation and may not come into effect until April. So are the supports enough, and will they be implemented soon enough? The Minister of Public Safety, Bill Blair, joins us now. Minister Blair, thanks very much for being here. Before I get to this economic aid package, which I know many Canadians are very interested in hearing about, I have to ask you about the border. That, of course, falls under your jurisdiction of Public Safety, Minister. Is the agreement between the United States and Canada finalized?
Those discussions moved ahead very, very rapidly. They began just yesterday. And moved ahead very quickly. The President and the Prime Minister spoke today and came to an agreement on it, and we have been working nonstop, very rapidly, to put all of the necessary processes and procedures and resources in place to bring it into effect. But what we would also like two things happened with that announcement today. First of all, we are going to restrict all non-essential travel, and we expect Canadians and Americans to respect that and to not travel across that border, to stay home. But the other important thing that we did is we secured and maintain the essential trade that exists between us. And that's as an equally important part, that we have protected that trade, because it's important to both of our countries.
I want to ask you about that in a second, but when does this come into effect? When can Canadians expect to be turned away from the border should they be crossing for leisure?
I believe that all of those steps should be in place later on today, but we're working very rapidly to make sure that we have all of the authorities in place to make it work. But
so that you don't have a date for the start at this point?
No, well, I think that reflects how rapidly this work was done, and our two governments, there was very collaborative effort between them, and our two governments very quickly came to an agreement that we would do this together, and it would be reciprocal. And so once that agreement is in place, we are moving very rapidly to put it into effect.
So 30 days, is that how long it's going to last?
Well, we don't know. We don't know, but I think it's really appropriate to have a set period of time in which this will be put in place, with a clear schedule of when we would come back and review the circumstances. You know, frankly, it's a little unpredictable at this point. But as long as these measures are required, then we'll continue to work to keep those measures in place. But at the same time, I think it's entirely appropriate to come back with the Americans in the not too distant future to continue to review this and make sure it's working for Canadians.
I understand how much it will evolve. I just want to know for sure, is the initial period of time 30 days?
Well, that's what we're aiming for. And again, in the final details of the documents, that will become clearer. But I think 30 days is the right time frame.
So there are a lot of Canadians and Canadians who not normally join us at this time, who are watching right now, who are wondering how this might impact their livelihood if they are involved to any degree in an export industry, which so many Canadians are, or in an industry that manufactures goods, for example, that goes across or depends on goods that comes in from the United States. How certain are you that this? I understand the sort of intent behind not affecting trade, but when we saw, for example, after 9/11. The restrictions that were in place then, it did disproportionately affect the Canadian economy. How concerned are you that we could see something similar?
I was highly motivated in this work to make sure that trade continued. We understand how important the movement of goods and services across that border are to the Canadian economy and also to the American economy. We know that the impact that it could have, and that's why it was such a priority to secure those trade routes. The movement of goods, food on the shelves, pharmaceuticals in our drugstores, food to the feedlots for our cattle and animals, and parts and goods to factories and services. The things that Canadians manufacture. Our largest trading partner is the United States, and we kept the door to that trade open through the work that we have announced today.
How certain are you, though, that door truly is open?
Well,
I understand. I'm not trying to take away from the intent, but do you think it will be a very different scenario versus 9/11, for example?
Well, I believe the effect of this virus, we know that's going to, affect the factory floor and where people work. And we're also looking at all the measures that are necessary to continue to support our truck drivers, the people that run our trains and our ferries and air cargo, to make sure that they remain healthy, to continue to do the important job of delivering those goods on both sides of the border. But we remain committed to that, and it's not just good intentions. We've put measures in place, and with some of the announcements that Minister Bill Morneau announced today, we are also looking at the companies that are affected and want to make sure that we provide support. And even the measures to provide additional liquidity in the market will help those industries transition through this difficult period. I think by maintaining these trade and supply routes and chains today, not only is going to help those industries in the short term, but in the long term, when the country finally turns the page on this virus and we move into a period of recovery, I think that by maintaining those supply chains, we really do facilitate a quicker recovery for those industries.
I want to ask you about the period prior to the recovery and more specifically what Minister Morneau announced today. There are a number of measures and a lot of money being directed towards people who wouldn't normally, let's say, qualify for EI and who need extra help just to take sick days, for example, if those aren't covered. They won't be able to access them probably until early April. Is there any way to expedite that? That seems, just given how fast things are moving, that seems like a long time away.
You know, we are very sensitive to that. If you're already on EI and you're already receiving certain of these benefits, you'll see the impact of what was announced almost immediately. The money will be quickly available. The others were aiming for April the 1st. And I'm aware that that's still 12 days away for a lot of Canadians, and there will be anxiety and concern. We'll monitor it very quickly. We're going to move ahead with all alacrity and to get this done as quickly as possible for Canadians. We know that this impact will be felt, and we want to be there for people. We're also in contact with their employers and companies, and we're working very closely with them and helping those companies help their own employees.
Does the federal government, though, have the technical capacity to get all that money out the door? Would it have been more productive or more efficient to do something like the Americans are looking at doing, and that is just cut a check to everybody?
Well, you know, one of the things we are doing is we're building upon existing capacities. And so, for example, the Minister, Qualtrough, responsible for EI payments, they have a good system of delivering those payments, and so we're working with her to get the money out the door.
But the system will probably be overloaded to a degree it hasn't seen before.
I think the system will be strained, but this is important work, and everybody understands the importance of the work, and everybody's going to do their very best to make sure that this gets into the hands of the Canadians who need it as quickly as they can.
So just to be clear, you don't believe, for people who are watching and wondering about accessing that money by April the 1st, you don't believe there will be any impediment to them doing so?
No, we're making it available for them to go and apply, and we're not making that too onerous so that people who need this money can gain access to it quickly. I know it's a whole of government effort to make sure that we respond to that need as quickly as possible. We're building on a lot of our existing capability, and we're going to have to build up our existing capability. But everybody knows how important this is, and we're working hard at it.
I think there are a lot of small business owners also watching right now, also interested in what was announced today for them, specifically where the wage subsidies are concerned. So your government has announced a 10% wage subsidy for up to 3 months, a maximum of $25,000 per employer. Other jurisdictions, let's take Denmark, for example, in Europe, 75%. Why only 10%?
Well, again, this is a measure at the outset of this, and there's been discussion about how we support the SMEs in this country. They employ so many people, and they're such an important part of our economy. We know that they're going to face pressures as a result of social change and social adaptation as a result of this virus. And so we are making available to them resources to help them help their employees, and we want to support them. I think you'll also see that this is aimed very much at employers with relatively small businesses, but who employ a set number of people. And I think the money that's been offered today will help.
It's 10%, though. With respect, I take your point, and it's not nothing. I don't mean to say that.
No, it's a fairly significant support.
I come from a family of small business owners, and they're worried about making payroll just in the next 2 weeks. Yeah. 10% of wages won't get you too far. We're
worried for them, too, and we are there to support them. We've been working very, very closely with them, and we've spoken to a lot of small businesses. The measures that we have put in place, I think, are going to help. But that's essentially a short-term measure. We're going to continue to monitor it.
That's what I wanted to ask, really. Is your government open to more in the future should the need be there?
I think the measures that we took today are appropriate to the circumstances we're facing and addressing the concerns that exist at this moment. We also know that this is a rapidly evolving event, and we will be continually challenged, and we're going to work with Canadians, and we're all in this together. And I will also tell you, we're in conversations with the provinces and territories across the country, and everybody understands they're all stepping up. And I've been really impressed as a Canadian to see the effort that's being made right across the country, and in our conversations with our mayors and officials at all levels. Everybody's working hard to support the people that support us, and those small businesses and the people that work in their factories and shops are the people that really keep our economy moving, and we want to be there to help them.
Okay, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you, Minister Blair. Pleasure to have you back. That's Public Safety Minister Bill Blair. Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.